Welcome everyone. I am very tired, but I had trouble coming up with a theme for tonight's show. I was going to make it another potpourri where I basically just talked about a lot of different things. Instead, I decided that these two subjects popped up and they're pretty much the same thing. Jonathan Coachman makes a statement on his podcast saying that Vince McMahon hated NXT because of Triple H, but also Kevin Nash on his podcast saying that Triple H would have left WWE if Vince didn't get ousted. So I'm deciding to just basically merge these two things together because I don't really agree with either one of them, but I'm willing to hear them out and I'm willing to take this before the people, that be all of you, to see what you think about these things. So let's start with Kevin Nash. I like Kevin Nash. So Kevin Nash on his podcast. This is going to be transcribed from what is this? WrestlingNews.co. Um, Here's the readout. It says WWE Hall of Famer and Sean Oliver had a conversation on Click This about who is the greatest of all time in wrestling. Noted Nash noted how this is all subjective when it comes to the business aspect of wrestling. He would say it's Triple H. Nash said the following: "My whole thing is just like who's the greatest of all time is just like, absolutely there's one A and one B, whether you're a Flair guy or a Hogan guy. And then there's the business aspect, and I say the best run of anybody would be Triple H from all standpoints of the business. There's no comparison." I want everybody to I'm gonna leave a pregnant pause because that one's pretty ridiculous. Triple H having the best run of anybody that has ever run a wrestling promotion, better than guys who ran wrestling promotions for 30 years, 40 years, guys like Eddie Graham, guys like Sam Mushnick, not Sam Mushnick, Sam Mushnick. Uh, just so many promoters, Don Owen, just so many promoters who had their territories up and running for years and years and years. Triple H run a territory for a year and a half. All of a sudden, it's the best run anybody's ever had in the business. Okay. He got an alley oop to success. We'll see what it is in 5 years. And then Nash continued by saying, "I think one of the reasons is because he's so good at what he does on a daily basis. As soon as he got his hands on the controls, shit changed. The product became is just night and day. Then Vince almost tried to kibosh it, and then they went through all the shit again. I think at that point it wouldn't have went the way it did. I think Paul would have walked. Steph already had. I mean, we never had the conversation, but I know Paul. I have talked to Paul about some things. I know some other information that made me feel really good when I heard how Endeavor TKO felt about Paul." So he is suggesting that Triple H would have walked if Vince McMahon hadn't been removed. This is top shelf glazing. Look, I wish I had a friend like Kevin Nash, man. That's top shelf glazing right there. Oh, Triple H older. Like, are you serious? Nash, you talking like a guy who never watched this stuff before. You know, it's not true. All right, that's flatly untrue. The idea that Triple H could leave. Some people have pitched that idea that we all know that there was a tug of war around 2021, 2022 when Vince first started getting in trouble. Things started leaning more towards Triple H. Triple H has always been on the creative side. He's been on the creative since 2002 at the very earliest, no latest, because he may have gotten in creative into the 90s, but he was for sure on the team in 2002. But so 20 years he was the understudy to Vince, and in 2021, 2022, Vince started finding himself into some trouble, and despite the fact that he's almost 80, and Triple H had his boom and bust period. You had the rise of NXT from game show to developmentals to super indie. Everybody was looking forward to the NXTs and the takeovers. People liked NXT. NXT got a TV deal, which ended up being one of the reasons NXT struggled, because now there's pressure, there's expectations on them that they didn't have before. It's one thing to be the little engine that could. It's another thing to now you're being paid to produce. NXT was always a money pit for WWE anyway. So Triple H was basically being entrusted to find new talent and to groom that talent, teach them the ways of the world, and then send them up to the main roster. Once Vince got a, a nice little healthy taste of some of the guys that he was bringing in, starting in like 2016 with like Finn Balor, and he found out that Finn Balor was kind of old. Then in 2021, 2022, pretty much everybody that came out of NXT was over the age of 30. Keith Lee, Damian Priest, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa. And then they were small too. Adam Cole. So they're small guys. They're over the age of 30. Vince was like, this is not going to work. Triple H just happened to have his heart condition. Vince, I guess he sends Bruce to smite NXT, just completely destroys it. We get NXT 2.0, which gives us Braun Breaker. Who the hell knows if we ever get Braun Breaker or Tiffany Stratton, or Carmelo Hayes? Even though Carmelo Hayes was in Black and Gold NXT, he wasn't really featured. Or bringing over guys like Ilya Dragunov. Who knows if that stuff would have ever happened if Vince didn't blow up NXT and get rid of all of the guys who were just hanging out in NXT. Now, on screen, a lot of people, especially during this time, started to believe that Vince was sabotaging the Triple H NXT product. Karrion Kross losing to Jeff Hardy, the slow push and then the repackage of Keith Lee, letting Io Sky go and not really bringing her back, letting Adam Cole and all of those guys go. But he did keep Damian Priest. He did keep Matt Riddle until Triple H ended up letting Matt Riddle go. But there were some talents that he wasn't that interested in. Throughout the entirety of NXT, however, if you actually look at the data, if you want to look at some real data, how many people came out of NXT and pretty much Vince put the launch pad behind them? Kevin Owens beat John Cena in his very first match straight out of NXT. Does that sound like Vince hated NXT to you? Shinsuke Nakamura won the first Royal Rumble, beat John Cena in the first year that they brought him out of NXT. Does that sound like Vince McMahon hates NXT to you? Asuka won the Royal Rumble right out of NXT. Now, because Vince McMahon saw star power in other people, like Bianca Belair or Alexa Bliss or Carmella, all of a sudden he hates NXT because he saw, Lacey Evans as having more potential than, say, Shayna Baszler. He hates NXT. That's not the evidence when I'm looking at things. He completely rewired the women's division and was down for it once you had Becky, Charlotte, and Bianca and all of them, gave them the Royal Rumble, even let 2 black women main event WrestleMania. Does that mean he hates NXT because he didn't see star power in the exact same people that Triple H thought were big stars? And then when they started to flop on TV, Vince really kind of, he was like, this ain't working. You're doing something wrong here. Now, one of the big people that I've seen a lot of folks, and I saw this on Twitter the other day, it's tangentially related, so I'm going to bring it up. Rhea Ripley. A lot of people say, oh, Vince wouldn't have got Rhea Ripley. He wasn't doing nothing with Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley wrestled in WrestleMania while she was the NXT champion under Vince. She lost that match, but she wrestled as the NXT champion at WrestleMania. The winner of the Royal Rumble was Charlotte, if I remember correctly. And she challenged for the NXT title at WrestleMania. Does that sound like Vince hates NXT? And of course, Rhea Ripley eventually came up and she was pushed for a short while. Then she got put into a couple of garbage tag teams while they was doing something else, which is pretty typical when, they're putting you on the back burner for a while. but Rhea Ripley's a very young girl. So she did get the rocket strapped to her again when Triple H took over. But it's not like Vince, was dogging her out and she was getting beat in the middle of the ring by, 4-foot Japanese girls or something like that. Or, something that was ridiculous. One of the things that I saw, also tangentially related, when Asuka debuted, it was 2017, I believe, TLC. Don't ask me how I know that. Actually, ask me how I know that because I saw it on Twitter. And people was like, "Oh, Vince, he ruined Asuka. Asuka has been a champion every single year she was in WWE. Every year. Now, because most of it is like, well, she lost to Carmella. So what? Shinsuke Nakamura, oh, he lost to Jinder Mahal. So what? You really take something like Ember Moon. Oh, Ember Moon didn't get a chance. Ember Moon sucks. Look at what she's doing not in WWE right now. Oh, she's the longest reigning Ring of Honor Women's Champion. Oh, really? Do you really care about that? How many of those matches can you actually name? She could be champion from here to eternity. Nobody's going to give a shit. She's not featured. And she doesn't do anything really on that product. She's not a draw for that product. And she wasn't a draw for the WWE product either. And then they sent her back to NXT and she bombed out again. Just because Vince saw talent in other people and gave other people opportunities does not mean he did not see the value in NXT. Now, in later years, of course, back to what we're talking about with 2021, 2022, he did have a bias against the older talent. The guys like Keith Lee, who he felt was overweight. That's another issue against Keith Lee. But Karrion Kross, who he probably felt was too old. And I think that was spite. Him beating Karrion Kross the first night he came in against Jeff Hardy. That was spite. Because Jeff wasn't even being pushed. There was nothing. Even though Jeff Hardy is Jeff Hardy, I mean, it is what it is on that tip. To have a seemingly unbeatable guy like Karrion Kross lose to Jeff Hardy was kind of crazy. That was crazy. But when you look at the entirety of the way Vince treated NXT talent, he was solid. It was solid. No, he didn't make Bo Dallas the world champion. Who the fuck would? Oh, he was the world champion in NXT. So what? NXT is a developmental territory. Somebody like Neville, he didn't really get a big chance in WWE, and I think that he was really growing into something with his King of the Cruiserweights thing, but of course he ended up being trapped as a cruiserweight, which was unfair to him. I think he got a Raw deal. I think a guy like Buddy Murphy may have gotten a Raw deal. I think Aleister Black got a Raw deal. He barely got to do much of anything. Vince tried to protect him a little bit. But there was clearly some interest in doing something with Aleister Black, but he wasn't sure what it was. Same thing kind of with Andrade, where there was interest in pushing Andrade, but he wasn't really sure what his ceiling was. Ricochet was kind of like a solid mid-carder. Like there was a mixture of things. These guys didn't always reach the same heights. But over time, though, Vince did a lot more for the Street Profits than Triple H ever did. When it comes to promoting and featuring the Street Profits, I mean, it was great. Oh, but what about the Viking experience? Yeah, Viking experience. We didn't necessarily like that. We didn't necessarily agree on the Viking experience. But you can look at one thing or you can look at the totality of things. A guy like Elias, for instance, who was doing nothing in NXT, comes to the main roster. Vince actually invests in him. Same thing with Eric Bugenhagen. Same thing with, a couple of other young talent or other types of talent. Again, these were not people that Triple H cared about. But these were guys that Vince thought could connect with the audience, and a lot of them did. When you look at a lot of the ways that Vince booked a guy like Eric, Rick Boogs, he's still today more over than DIY is, and Triple H has been pushing him for a year. The crowd would probably actually pop if Rick Boogs showed up, if Elias showed up. There's a lot of people that Vince saw talent in that Triple H didn't. So maybe it's Triple H the one that doesn't have a good eye for talent. You know, he was the one that decided to sign damn near 40-year-old guys from Ring of Honor. That wasn't a Vince decision. That was a Triple H decision. And then once they started going head to head with Dynamite, he realized that people hated the WWE product. Even if it was a product that they liked, like NXT, they found reasons to hate it and didn't watch it. They would rather watch Joey Janela and Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian than watch Adam Cole and Finn Balor. So if you're Vince McMahon, you're going to ask yourself the question, why should I push these people over the stars that I know work when they can't even outrate the fucking indie guys that has never been under WWE contract? People that nobody's ever heard of before. Seems to me that people who think that Triple H and Vince, there's certainly some friction there. Absolutely. But if you think that Vince invested all that time and money into NXT, but hated the product and hated all the wrestlers that came out of the NXT, you're crazy. It just doesn't measure up when you actually look at the way he positioned a lot of those talent. You could say, well, Bobby Roode was NXT champion, and he was only like the US champion in WWE. Okay, what's your point? That's a good run. He was a tag team champion too, if I remember correctly. But remember, Vince was actually going to push Jason Jordan until Jason Jordan had that career-ending neck injury. Remember, Vince was actually pushed Big E, who was a former NXT champion. He had a really good run in WWE, became world champion. You got to look at the totality of this thing. Even Jinder Mahal, who was an NXT talent, became WWE champion. The thing is, Vince looked at certain folks like Roman or John Cena and said, those are my guys. And if I can use a talent to elevate my guys, great. If I can't, stick them in the mid card somewhere. Tuck them in the Intercontinental title somewhere. And guess what? You can have a perfectly fine career as the Intercontinental champion. That's not a Tito Santana-like career, a Rick Martel-like career. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, there's so many guys that Triple H saw nothing in. You could barely, I can almost guarantee you guys cannot name a fucking thing some of these people did in NXT. What did Alexa Bliss do in NXT? Nothing. She didn't do anything. Carmella was a manager in NXT. She ended up being the only one of those three still on the roster 4 years later. And this, of course, once Vince tried to push Enzo as a solo, first he pushed Enzo and Cass as a tag team. Then he tried to push both of them as solos, and they flamed out twice. What more can you do? I mean, it is what it is, man. It seems weird to me though that people are not looking at the totality of this thing. They're just kind of looking at one thing. And this leads us to Jonathan Coachman's comment. No, let's not do that. Because Enzo, part of the reason why Enzo flamed out was because he was not well liked backstage. His attitude was one of the reasons why nobody liked him. That made it an easy decision to fire him when he got falsely accused. Now, the false accusation is most certainly the reason why he got canned. But he was already on the rocks before then. Same thing with Matt Riddle. You know, Matt Riddle, a lot of stuff started to add up, and that's when they got rid of him. Same thing with Velveteen Dream. When stuff started to add up, that's when they was done with him. But it wasn't just that he got accused of rape. So this takes us to Jonathan Coachman, who says, "What did Vince hate the most when it comes to Triple H? He hated something new that people liked that wasn't his idea. Triple H came up with NXT, and you notice that NXT stars would never be pushed. See, this is false. This is false information." He says, "Now what do you see? What do you see tonight on Monday Night Raw? You're seeing NXT stars all over the place. That's Triple H. That's his baby. His best friend, Shawn Michaels, runs NXT. Vince hated that. He didn't want to give anybody credit, much less his son-in-law. So people would possibly think that Triple H is smarter than him. This is a conspiracy theory. I don't know nothing about the latter part of this. But the fact is, NXT was running for, 10, 12 years? At this point, most of the main event guys are going to be NXT talent. That's just simple math at this point. Everybody after John Cena is pretty much an NXT talent. Roman Reigns, well, Seth Rollins was in NXT for a cup of coffee. Bray Wyatt was in NXT for a while. There's just simple math would tell you that mostly NXT talent are being pushed now. Because now the company is mostly NXT talent. So this is a terrible argument. There are people who just say stuff because it sounds good. But it's not real. It's not real. If Vince didn't like NXT, he would have killed it. He would have just gotten rid of it. Instead, they fought to put NXT on TV. He only got rid of it when Triple H stopped producing people that he felt like he can use. When he started looking at the ages of some of these talent and started saying, like, my God, this guy's a 36-year-old rookie. What can I do with this guy? And it's not just like, okay, it's one. Because, Batista was kind of old when he got brought up. But it's not like one guy. It's like 6 of them that are like 35 years old that you're sending me straight from NXT. And, hey, they may have a great look, but my God, what can I really do? What can I build around? And then what happened? Vince saw Austin Theory. Austin Theory is in his mid-20s. He's in great shape. Comes from NXT where he wasn't doing anything. Vince snatched him up and did a personal fucking storyline with him. Was pushing him himself, using his own face to push Austin Theory. Trying to make Austin Theory the next guy. Look, that should tell you alone that the problem was he didn't like the talent that Triple H was sending. That's why he blew up NXT. It wasn't because, he's jealous of NXT. Why would he be jealous of the NXT when it's losing money and doing low ratings on television? Why? What's there to be jealous of? Well, the people liked it. The niggas on the internet liked it. It ran out of a sound studio in Florida. Then it ran out of the Performance Center in Florida. Very strange. But then look what happened with Austin Theory as soon as Vince left. Did he get a new push? Did they change him up a little bit and push him? No. right back down to the bottom. Here comes Kevin Owens, and here comes Sami Zayn, and all the old some bitches that Vince said, okay, this guy's kind of old. It's time to find something new. Those people were just brought right on back. Shinsuke Nakamura, we're going to push him again. Shayna Baszler, we're going to push her. Bianca Belair, no, we don't have room for her. You got to make room for... I'm not going to say it. Candice LeRae, bring her in, and Indy Hartwell and all of them. It's like, bro, just watch your TV and follow the product, man. Follow the product. Yep, Liv Morgan, they kept her around even though she was very young, and at one point she was really out of shape. And she's, not terribly athletic for a girl wrestler. She's finally starting to hit her stride a little bit. But that was because Vince kept giving her opportunities, even though he kind of jerked her back and forth a little bit. It was his decision to keep giving her chances. Lord have mercy, who knows what would have happened to Liv Morgan today? She probably would have got cut by now. There are female wrestlers that are better than Liv Morgan that got cut. But Vince saw the value in having somebody like Liv, or somebody like Alexa, or somebody like Carmella, who is not a traditional pro wrestler, but is sort of has crossover appeal, and that the fans will find attractive, and has the work ethic, and is willing to do this stuff. I don't see the problem. I mean, sure, people probably would have preferred to have Ruby Riott be a big star over Liv Morgan, but it didn't work out that way. She went over to AEW, was supposed to be a big star. That didn't work out either. So, I mean, you just take a look at the entire scope of Vince and NXT. It was simple. It was the same shit that you would hear from Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette would tell you all, how great he thought Doug Basham was, or Nick Dinsmore, or whatever. How great he thought that guy is. But Vince would say, I like Shelton Benjamin. We're pushing him. And then Cornette would be like, oh, Shelton's great, but this guy, he's going to make it the white bread, black boots, black trunks, nothing. Nobody cares about this man. Oh, that kid that does the rapping thing, the rewind stuff, he might be pretty good. Oh, no. Here's Doug Basham. Like, I don't want but Doug Basham. We don't want Doug Basham over here, okay? We don't want Nick Dinsmore. I don't care what you did with him in OVW. That's not what we're looking for. He could be on the card, and those guys did make the roster. But ultimately, he is like he was going shopping. He goes in there and this is okay, but not really what I'm looking for. Waiting for something that catches his eye. Put this guy somewhere else. I don't know. Just evaluating talent, looking at him, age, body type, work ethic, that kind of stuff. And this guy's okay. He's not much. Put him over here. This guy's exceptional. We put him to the side. That's really all it was. It was him finding the diamonds in the rough. You could try to sell him on whoever you want. But ultimately, he picked the guys that he liked. And sometimes he was right. Sometimes he was wrong. But you wouldn't have Roman Reigns right now if Triple H got to make the choice. Because hey, they'll tell you 100 times he wasn't one of the choices that CM Punk had with the Shield. So now you don't have the gift of discernment anymore on this main roster. So now all of a sudden we got the stuff that we got on Mondays and Fridays. And then also, here's another thing. When it comes to talent, one of the last things Vince did before he left is he actually went and got Cody. Cody told the story that Vince flew to his house to get him to resign. That's one of the last things he did. The bloodline story is one of the last things Vince was involved with. What's the biggest shit in WWE today? Cody and the bloodline. Triple H ain't done nothing yet. Now, some of the mid-card guys, like Bronson Reed, who he's finally starting to really get behind. Okay, but Vince made Gunther the Intercontinental Champion. That happened right under Vince. But when you look at the overall, Triple H really ain't done much of anything except push the people that was already there and do something slightly different with people who was already there. Dominic Mysterio is probably the biggest change. And I'm not even sure how much of that you can give Triple H credit for. Because it's been about a year or two of Dominic Mysterio being one of the most over guys in the world. And he's making it look easy. But there's a lot of people who didn't want Dominic there. A lot of the people who love indie wrestlers and all that kind of shit, you can go and search it. Dominic is a Nepo baby. He sucks, blah, 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 blah. Now he's one of the most over guys in the business. So they doing, look, Triple H is doing a good job. You know, we're not denying that. They're selling $3,000 WrestleMania tickets. What happened to those people who sued Ticketmaster? I need to go and look that up. My God, seeing that they're selling WrestleMania tickets for $1,500 or whatever, I'm like, bro, somebody needs to go to prison. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Somebody needs to go to prison. WG Phil says, you think Ricochet would have stayed under Vince? It's strange a lot of black people are leaving the roster as much as I despise race cars. You know, I don't want to play. I don't want to go there. I will say it is suspicious. Just like I think it was suspicious that a lot of older talent like AJ Styles and John Cena and Becky Lynch all decided to leave at the same time. You know, like that's real suspicious. That's real suspicious. But I don't know. But Ricochet, I think that he would have wanted to go to AEW eventually. You know, because it's more his speed in terms of, you know, the style of match. And I think that eventually I think it was a big deal. I forget, I don't know if it was 2020 or 2019 or whatever, when his contract came up and he decided to stay and a bunch of people attacked him and saying he doesn't know his worth and all this kind of shit. There was a lot of pressure on him to leave. They didn't give him many reasons to stay because he wasn't going to go much further than he was already at. They didn't see him as being a world champion. So now he's like, well, I can just go to AEW and have a fresh start at the very least. He's still a young guy. I think he's like maybe mid-30s. He's not too old. You know, he had his run in WWE. He did what he could. He was solid, had a solid career. But it was time to move on. Will Dave says Triple H don't know how to book. His booking is fine. His talent decisions is shitty too. A lot of what you do is whether people are believable in the role and whether people actually like and find the talent that you're using to be entertaining or marketable. You know, but as Beep says here, the boss man cares about marketability nationwide. Who would have thought? Yeah, I mean, it's basically it's simple stuff. You know, same reason why he decided, to go with Hulk Hogan over, maybe getting somebody else who might have been a better wrestler is because he looked and says, yo, this is the entertainment business. Vern Gagne might care about who's a greater or better grappler, but I don't give a shit about that. And the audience don't give a shit about that. So guess what? I'm gonna go with Hogan. And the dirt sheets and the magazines and everybody can run around talking about how Hulk Hogan can't work and Hulk Hogan can't wrestle. Hulk Hogan is making money. You put his face on anything, they're buying it. So guess what? It's the right thing to do. And then you book around Hulk Hogan's strengths. You don't book Hulk Hogan to be in a 30-minute, uh, God damn it, headlock takeover, back body drop match. You don't do that. You just don't book that way. Boom, success. D says Theory probably would be main event in WrestleMania if Vince was still around. He was certainly in a better position. And you know what? I think we all be in a better place. We probably would have Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in AEW right now if Vince would have stayed. Bronson Reed probably would have been over there too. WG Phil says Indy is pretty young. Yeah, she is. I don't understand why they pulled her from NXT. She had just won the title and she had just gotten injured actually when they pulled her out of NXT. It seemed like they wanted to do something with tag team with her, and then they aborted it. So I'd say send Indy back to NXT. That's what I would do. Do you remember Jordan Miles, aka ACH? Of course I do. I remember seeing him in Ring of Honor. I was really excited to see him in NXT. I thought he was really good. He could actually talk. He wasn't too bad. And then he spurged out. And then he spurged out again. I think he came back to wrestling since his second or third spurg out, but he keeps malfunctioning and he can't stick around. It would be nice if Tony Khan tried to bring him in, though. AJ3 says inner stage push Natalya and her husband down in NXT, while on the main roster they would just filler. Yeah, when in the early days of NXT they would push TJ and they would push Natalya and they would bring Claudio / Cesaro in and he would do some stuff. And that was, William Regal was still wrestling. That was a way to make NXT interesting and to give the fans a little treat every once in a while. Once it became like a regular thing, though, it stopped being as important. But it's still kind of fun now, if we're being honest. AJ3 says Aleister was a transitional champion in NXT, but on the main roster, he was an entrance. Well, because there was clearly something there in terms of the gimmick. They were just working on how best to present the gimmick. And it wasn't even like Aleister Black was turned into a joke, I think he may have lost only a handful of matches for the 2 years he was on the main roster. He didn't lose a lot, but it was a lot of restarts. It was, we're going to introduce him, do some stuff, then they pull him off TV and reintroduce him again. And then, they were really doing something fun with Tales from the Black Father or something like that, or Dark Father or whatever it was. And then they pulled him from TV right after he debuted, which was stupid, really stupid. AJ3 says, don't forget Adam Cole buried Cross, and Cross has never recovered since. That is true. That is true. I just saw a clip of that the other day. And that was very important. Very damaging to Karrion Kross. I think his confidence was broken at that point. WG Phil says the NXT women have a better success ratio than the men in black and gold NXT. Yeah, because I think most of that is because they rebuilt the division. Once they rebuilt away from the divas, it was all NXT women from that point. Because they pretty much even flushed a lot of the women that was in the old divas division. They pretty much got rid of all of those women. So The women's division from like 2016, 2017 forward is all NXT for the most part. WG Phil says Vince's reaction to each call up Finn. I like the face paint. He got injured, pal. Shinsuke Nakamura, you're here to slow down, are you? Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole. Oh hell no. Damian Priest, I like him. Yeah, Priest was tall, had an intriguing look. He was a little older, but Vince actually used him. You know, was involved with it, made him like the United States champion, put him with Edge. I think that's when around the time Vince was leaving is when they started doing Judgment Day. So there was some interesting stuff going on there with Damian Priest. It wasn't always the strongest booking with Damian Priest, but he was visible. He was there. You know, it was much like Matt Riddle, where the crowd liked him, so Vince liked him, but he wasn't going to go all the way with them quite yet. You know, he hadn't made up his mind on that. AJ3 says, speaking of Ricochet, his trivia. Did you know that he was trained by Chuck Taylor? Oh my God. Oh, ugh, that sucks. That sucks. Dennis King says people hated Dominic when he was a face. That is absolutely true. Humble 85, Bret Hart was not lying about Triple H's lack of creativity. I agree with that. Triple H, and I think it's become a running joke on this side of the internet that all he knows is friendship and betrayal. Look, wrestling is all about relationships and people turning on each other eventually. I mean, but you're not supposed to make it so obvious. I think some of the best heel turns are things that you didn't expect coming. You know, the Shield heel turn was great because you didn't really expect it, and breaking the Shield up while they're at the top was very impressive. That was very well done. Good storytelling. WG Phil says, to be honest, Sammy is a WWE lifer. You seem like a guy Vince would keep. Also Owens because he re-signed other Vince. Yeah. I think, if there was going to be some kind of issue, it would probably be the Saudi stuff with the both of them, because Sammy and his politics, there's probably going to be some issues surrounding that. But for the most part, Sami Zayn was given a lot of free reign in WWE. He got a chance to do a lot of fun stuff. And I'm pretty sure if you were to ask him, he probably proved himself to Vince, especially with the Johnny Knoxville match. He probably won Vince over with that. The conspiracy theorist stuff that he was doing was great. Like Sami Zayn is legitimately a entertaining guy. He's super boring right now because again, Triple H doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. He doesn't know how to make characters. But Sami Zayn is multi-dimensional. He's very much a modern day Mick Foley. Beat says Triple H playing the long game. Ticket prices will double when he can get Gargano versus Kushida headlining WrestleMania. Oh God, $10,000 WrestleMania tickets. Main event: Tommaso Ciampa versus Gargano. DIY explodes. Nobody's gonna give a shit. What are they thinking? Dennis King says Triple H and AEW have a problem with who they push. The stories will be better with the right talent involved. Yeah, I mean that's a big thing. Like you can't. That's like everybody thought. Like you could just make what did Jay-Z say? I heard niggas saying they made Hove, which made Hove say, okay, make another Hove. You can't make a new Hulk Hogan or a new John Cena or a new Roman Reigns or whatever. You gotta have vision. You gotta have the right people in the right place. You gotta have characters willing to build them and make them strong or whatever. You gotta be strategic sometimes. But I think if Vince was in control right now, I think Braun Breaker will be near the top of Monday Night Raw, and Austin Theory will be the top SmackDown, probably right now. Now, I don't think he would have let the bloodline story go for 4 years. That's one thing that I think he would have blown that off. I don't think he would have let it run for as long as it did, especially once the crowds came back. Like, I could definitely see, Vince probably taking the belt from Roman, if not at the previous WrestleMania, because I think Vince was still involved when Roman and Cody had their first match. He probably would have lost it later that year, though. Like, I don't think Vince would have been in favor of Roman having the belt a whole another year. And part of the reason why it ended up working is because The Rock came back. That's one of the reasons why. And that's because Vince got ousted for real at that point. It was when The Rock showed up. And that really, injected a lot of energy into the Bloodline story, too. Crossface Ray says, I think Aleister Black, if he goes back to WWE, is getting too old. I hate that he signed like a lifetime contract with AEW. I don't know what made him do that. But he was already in his mid-30s when he signed that, when he got brought up to the main roster. I think I like Aleister Black enough that I think he can make an impact if he was to return to WWE. I hope he gets that chance, because I still am a fan. But you're right, he is kind of old. I'll come back to your story about the Bucks. It says, Crossface Ray says, how much you want to bet DIY beat Motor City Machine Guns on Friday? Man, I really hope not. I really hope not. Did I see Sting sign a Legends deal with AEW? Oh, so AEW is doing Legends deals now. Great. So now we got two promotions doing that shit. All right. The one EB says, what do you think about the rumor about the Bucks saving AEW in the Mox story? Okay, let's discuss this for a second. I don't think people will buy that. The Young Bucks have never been less over than they are right now. Nobody cares about AEW as a company. I'm a storyteller. When I started this channel, I just wanted to talk about wrestling, and then I moved into culture and politics and sports and a bunch of shit. But at my heart, I'm a storyteller. If you create a conflict over a thing, no matter what that thing is, people have to care about the thing. The Lord of the Rings, the Dragon Ball, whatever. People have to care about the thing. If people don't care about the thing, then they don't care about you fighting over the thing. The same thing with a championship. If you're going to fight for control of the company, people have to care about who's in control of the company. If nobody cares, then the angle is not going to work. It never worked in TNA. It worked in WCW. It never worked in TNA. They had a bunch of those storylines about who is going to be in control of TNA. It's all about the power. Nobody cares. Nobody has ever cared about who is in control of TNA. Ever. And only for a short time, 2 years, did anybody ever care about who was an authority figure in WCW. AEW has blown this story. And quite frankly, I don't think anybody gives a shit. I don't think anybody cares about who's in control of the company. So, do I think that the Young Bucks are going to save AEW? They might book themselves to be the saviors. It would be a continuance of the story that they already started when they talked about AEW wouldn't exist without us. But people get tired of hearing that. Enough of that shit. The only way this thing works is if it's Darby. That's the only way it works. And they got to pay that off. It's got to be Darby. You can have the Young Bucks help, I guess, but it's got to be Darby. This is a Darby story. You don't have much of a choice at this point. Now, if they want to try to swerve Hangman in there, that'd be a disaster. It'd be even worse if it was Jack Perry. But that tells you right there that nobody involved with the Elite, this shit won't work. You might be able to pop something if you bring Kenny Omega in there to do, not to be ultimately the hero of the story. Now, again, it has to be somebody else. But if you use Kenny Omega as sort of the Lex Luger of the story, where he's a veteran, been around for a while, and he's a credible challenger to Moxley, and it's, especially if he just returned in a strong babyface, that could work. That could get people interested in the story. But ultimately, you got to put an exclamation point on this thing. If Kenny was the ultimate hero of the story, I think people would be happy with that. A certain section of the AEW fan base would be happy with that. But ultimately, we've seen enough Kenny Omega John Moxley matches that it wouldn't really move me. I think when you do something like this, especially with the way Moxley is talking, it's got to be a young guy who steps up to the plate. And the only young guy that makes sense is Darby. Humble 85 says the problem with NXT is that it is not a standalone brand. It is doing all the things that Raw and SmackDown are doing. I think NXT is doing enough different stuff that it clearly is never going to be a standalone brand. There's always going to be who's going to pop up from Raw or SmackDown. It's always going to be developmental. It's never going to go. Cody's on that bullshit again. I don't know if NXT even be developmental anymore. Like, what? Did you watch the show? If I graded NXT by everybody on this show needs to look like they had at least 5 years in the business. Most of the 99% of the roster is shit. But if you just take it easy and you realize most of these people are training, like Kalani Jordan has not been wrestling for 2 years. You know, if she wrestles like Sol Ruka ain't been wrestling 2 years. So you can relax, take it easy when you watch them. I don't watch Trick Williams and have the same, expectations as I'm watching Will Ospreay. It's not the same thing, you know. I definitely watch NXT on a curve, and that curve is because it's developmental, and because of that curve, I actually enjoy the show a lot more, you know. So no, I think NXT needs to keep doing what it's doing, keep working on making new stars, keep having fun, keep the product fun. That's the one thing that NXT is doing that other companies are not. The product is energetic and it's fun. That you can't beat it. AJ3 says, I really feel bad for the Motor City Machine Guns. 18 years and TNA. What a waste. I don't feel bad for them. They kept signing those contracts. Humble says, NXT needs reality-based storylines. I would rather them have the storylines that they have now than try to do spooky shit. And this is like the first Halloween Havoc in a while where they haven't tried to do something spooky. Like they're gonna do a PLE. Was it Sunday? I wonder if they're gonna do like a haunted house segment and all that kind of stuff like they did last year, or they didn't talk about Scream Queens or anything like that, which would have made the product fun, like Shotzi showing up to do Scream Queen, Elvira shit. That stuff usually is pretty fun. They're not even bothering with that this year though. The saying says, "Is it bad that I want Vince back?" I wouldn't say that it's bad. I will say that it is. What's the appropriate word? I'm looking for. I wouldn't say bad. I would just say Vince has some issues. Like even if whether you think he did that shit or not, he simply can't be in the company during this time. It's just not realistic. And also, the motherfucker is 80. You know, like I know he won't actually be 80 for like another year or two, but it was probably time for him to retire anyway. And the change has to happen at some point. You know, like he can't be immortal. And even if he was to live till he's 90, the ideas weren't going to still be there the same way, and other people would just be more and more influential as time goes on anyway. So the way I look at it is it's unfortunate that it came to this, but it was either going to be this or he fucking dies. You know, like it was this was the only way it was going to happen. So, but I'm one of those the band-aid is off kind of guys, so it's fine. I we can deal with it. I just want Triple H to get some advisors who care about the product and want to jazz the product up. Um, if I was Triple H though, I probably would get rid of Bruce and Michael Hayes. You know, let's start right there. You know, let's make that big change. Let's get rid of Bruce and Michael Hayes. You know, those guys have been around forever. I'm pretty sure they have nothing to add to the product anymore. You know, there's got to be some people in the company that have been around for a while that you can trust, and let those guys kind of be some of your stars in terms of the writing team and creative team. But I think the band-aid should have come off. Like soon as it was absolutely Vince is not coming back, Bruce should have been gone, Michael Hayes should have been gone, and it should have just been a whole new thing. You know, but they're still there. So obviously they're bringing something to the show. I'm not just saying like I want everybody to get fired. It's just that I think that if you're going to start over, start from scratch, you might as well just go for it. You know. Dennis King says, "Do you think it's time for a Montez Ford to get a singles run?" I'm not going to lie to you. As much as I like Montez Ford as a singles star and I like that idea, they have not reached their full potential yet in terms of the Street Profits. There's still so much for those guys to do. They still need to have like a statement title run and then break them up. But I would suggest more of a New Day kind of thing with the Street Profits where they're still friends and yet they kind of go their own way. Like maybe you draft one of them to a different brand. That way you don't have to feud against each other. You know, and then you could just build to them being reunited later if it don't work out. Dennis King said the sheet say Malachi contract up 2025. Sheesh. Sheesh. Beep says, you think that since the Eddie Graham booking lineage is done, did someone replace how to book with a copy of Shonen Jump? It was probably more like a modern Wonder Woman comic or some shit. Kevin White says, I'm curious to hear your take on the NBA becoming more and more like pro wrestling with these predetermined storylines, more specifically LeBron and his not ready for primetime son. Well, I guess you could say it's the same thing with the NFL because Deion Sanders is going to carry his boys to the NFL, then he's going to jump ship and join them. I guarantee you that's exactly what's going to happen. He's going to stay in Colorado as long as his boys are in college. And then when it's draft time, he's magically going to find himself the head coach of some NFL team and probably end up with his son. Crossface Ray said, I hate the Young Bucks with a burning passion. You ain't the only one. A lot of people hate those fucking guys. It's just all about when did you get on the train. I bought a ticket in 2010. You know, I've never liked the Young Bucks. I've never liked them. You know, I always thought they were the most overrated tag team on planet Earth. You know, so that's just me though. What about Action Andretti? Southeast guy 21 says Shawn Michaels would be a better booker than Triple H on the main roster. Hell, Booker T. Have you watched Reality of Wrestling? Booker T is actually not a bad booker. His product is actually very entertaining. It's kind of NXT-ish, but it's fun. Like he did a Sherry Martel Classic tournament a couple of weeks ago. I actually watched it twice, which is rare. Like I only watch NXT twice. You know, I rarely watch any wrestling show twice. You know, except for maybe a pay-per-view. Because sometimes the first time I watched a pay-per-view, I'm watching it to do the review. The second time I watch it without a pen or a paper or anything like that, I'm just watching the show just to watch it. And sometimes that doesn't help. Sometimes it helps tremendously. But I really only watch NXT twice in terms of watching the entire show twice. But I watched the Reality of Wrestling, Sherry Martel tournament. Like I watched a women's only show twice because I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Booker T as a booker is not bad. You know, my whole thing is it's gonna be interesting times when CM Punk is booking NXT. That's gonna be interesting. I don't know if I'm looking forward to that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm looking forward to it. Shawn really just got started, and they're already trying to replace him. So maybe they'll pull Shawn up to the main roster, and they'll let CM Punk take over NXT. I got the chills thinking about that. I don't know. I don't know, man. Send Paul to help him. Let Paul help him. Then maybe we'll have a conversation. I'm not trusting Punk to do it by himself. Crossface says, "Do you think Mercedes Moné is the reason Stephanie got signed, or is she delusional?" I think it's a combination. Stephanie wanted to be in WWE anyway. I think her tryout was like 6 years ago or something. I think they probably William Regal probably watched the match between her and Mercedes and thought she was pretty good and decided to sign her up. I know there's no doubt that the match had some influence on her being signed almost immediately. But I would not doubt that she was already on their radar anyway because she went to a tryout. And we already know that WWE keeps dossiers on people. So they really keep up with folks when they leave. So if you have a tryout and they don't sign you, they do keep track of you just in case you get better or you get into some kind of legal trouble or something like that, just so they'll know. So I'm pretty sure she had a tryout and they probably kept tabs on her, but she goes to Mexico. That's basically like being invisible. And then when she popped back up on AEW, they were like, "Oh, okay, I guess so." She's pretty good and she wanted to work here anyway, so let's sign her on up. So I'm pretty sure it had some influence, but I don't think it was, oh, Mercedes did such a great job with her that all of a sudden we're going to sign her. That's delusional. WWE needs to be more sports entertainment and less pure wrestling. Oh, music to my ears. Again, if I want to watch the shit that Triple H wants me to watch, again, this is not the NWA. I tried to tell that shit 100 times. There needs to be more stuff. The characters need to have different angles to them. I'm absolutely disgusted at what's going on with Austin Theory and Brian Breaker and Tiffany Stratton. That's the Trinity. The Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman of WWE. There you go, right there. Those should be your three biggest stars right now. Yes, you want to, you got Rhea Ripley and you got Bianca, and there's some other ones that have more veteran status. I'm not saying you just shoot Tiffany Stratton straight to the top, but she should certainly be doing better than she's doing now. Austin Theory should certainly be doing better, and Braun Breaker should be doing better. Even though Braun Breaker is a champion, it just happened again, and him losing to Jey Uso and Sami Zayn clean, and not in a way that protected him, and the generic music that he's got, he's a badass. It's like, ugh. I like Braun Breaker a lot, but a lot of the stuff around him is. If he didn't have such powerful Steiner aura, they're basically like Saiyans. This would be a rougher time, I think. But he's got like real powerful Steiner aura, so it's not hurting them too bad. AJ3 says Hunter watches NXT for the work rate more than the characters and the charisma personalities. I bet you're in 2025 he'll call up Roxanne Perez and Julia in no time. Oh my God, the Roxanne Perez push is kicking my ass. I'm not even gonna hold you up. A lot of people are talking about how great she is, and she's a great in-ring performer. But her having a chokehold on this title is driving me nuts. I'm ready for her to drop it. She didn't have a personality. She's a great, work rate character. But she should have lost the belt to Thea Hale. And it should have happened. How long ago was that? But it should have gave Thea her big moment and then maybe had Roxanne win it back or whatever. But they really missed something with not giving it to Thea. And I know Thea was super young, but she was one of the most over people on planet Earth at the time. So she certainly should have won it. Yes, WWE is different from other kinds of wrestling. It needs to be more entertainment based. D says last year I saw a Jada Parker interview and she said she hate NXT, keep getting called developmental. Well, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. He wonders if The Rock will ever take over. The Rock doesn't even do his own creative. He has his own little personal writer that helps him. The Rock ain't about to do that. Humble says, I think if you keep bringing down the main roster stars on NXT, it doesn't help the audience to learn about the NXT superstars. It depends. It depends. Because NXT is on television, you kind of have to. You got to have to mix in some of the main roster stars in order to keep the ratings up. If you focus on the NXT talent, like they did with Javon Evans and Randy Orton, you didn't put so much emphasis on Randy Orton. They put a lot of the emphasis on Javon. Then it could work. It could turn out just fine. If you decide that you're going to build the show around who's coming in, then yeah, you're right. But NXT has been smart in the last couple of times that they've brought people in, that they haven't built the show around the superstar that's coming in. Instead, they built around the rookie. Triple H booking is boring and not fun. I agree. X9 says, I don't know why, but I posted questions on my alt and now on my main. I hope these go through. Well, that one did. Triple H sucks as a booker. He's an overrated booker. I agree with that. Booker T would also be a way better. I enjoy Booker T's show, man. Because it's not really a talent issue. I haven't seen everybody that he's got, so it's not like I hate this person and Booker T, keeps pushing him. I typically can take it in stride. But when it comes to like NWA, I just can't stand the decisions that they make. Like there's a lot of NWA decisions I just don't get. Like is Corgan on crack? He's got to be on crack. Like you look at some of this stuff and you're just like, please, whatever. The criticism of Kalani is that she's too vanilla. If they were to make a brand ambassador to Girls Inc. or the Girl Scouts of America, she could get an audience of young girls. I actually agree with that. Like she's very suburban. She just seems like, she makes her bed every morning. Very nice girl. I don't think she got a mean bone in her body. She could be a good role model. She's just super young, and that's really kind of what it boils down to. I think she's younger than 25. Like she needs some more time under her belt. But I think she's going to be an excellent baby face. She's going to need to get a little bit more. She's going to get a little bit dirtier, but she can be a great baby face. She got to get angry. And that's one of the things that I think that when people are discussing their characters, It's one of the things that they have to understand is your character has to go through stuff, and you have to show your character from a lot of different areas. And that's mostly how you find yourself. Like Kalani is very vanilla, as we've been discussing. That's why I think she needs to lose that belt. And she needs to lose the belt in like a vicious and violent way to show struggle, to show anger, to show that she can get frustrated, just so that we can see that she can do it. Because right now, I don't think that she's got a mean or angry bone in her body. That doesn't help when you're a pro wrestler. It says WWE has sucked since 2002 after WrestleMania 18. I disagree. I disagree. I actually liked some of the Ruthless Aggression stuff. Yeah, Deanna standing over. Yeah, nobody's gonna stay there. You can forget it. Man, he getting out of there quick. Southeast guys against pure wrestling. I'm not against it. I just don't think WWE should do it. I watch WWE because I don't want to see that. If I wanted to watch that stuff, I just watch it somewhere else. You know, let somebody else do that. WWE should do WWE. Just like I don't think Disney should try to copy, what they do in Japan or anyone else. Disney should be Disney. Except I don't think Disney should be Disney now though, because they kind of suck. Hot take: NXT 2.0 wasn't that bad. I actually liked NXT 2.0 quite a bit. I was a big fan. Bro, they need to turn Woods already. New Day have to end. Have Big E come back so he can hurt more. I don't think they're gonna turn Xavier though. I think they're gonna end up turning Kofi too. They already said they're never breaking up. Like, it would be weird for them to break up and then do what? Feud against each other? They may do a thing where Xavier Woods quits and goes to SmackDown to be a solo act or something. I don't think they'll ever have a match against each other that means anything. I like NWA when it first started back up. X9 says Big Nose has wrecked SmackDown and the weird 5 pay-per-view matches and Money in the Bank. Yeah, why 5 matches? He has it's absolutely an abomination with the 5 matches. Crossface Ray says Triple H is going to give Johnny Gargano an undefeated streak at WrestleMania. Oh, don't give him any ideas. That man do not need any ideas. All right. So we've discussed this thing, man. It is what it is. I think that everybody's wrong about how Vince envisioned Triple H in NXT. I think if you just watch the product, you can see that Vince tried with some of these people, even giving them super pushes right out of the gate, but they didn't stick. Those guys couldn't connect with the audience or they couldn't deliver in terms of promo and personality or anything like that. Wasn't marketable enough. And it's unfortunate. But I think the idea that, Triple H was going to leave the company, Vince didn't like, and do what? I didn't even think about that. Like, leave the company and do what? Go sit at home and wait for Vince to call him to come back. He wasn't going to start his own promotion. Well, the reason NXT was anything was because he had Vince's money to play with. Without that, he ain't got nothing. Last question. Do you think Nick Aldis will be a wrestler again and we get a new GM? I think we're building up to that. I think he wants to wrestle, and I think we're building up to him wrestling eventually. All right. Thanks everybody for the time and for stopping by. I'll talk to you guys next week. Will be the Q&A. I'm going to immediately after this live stream create a portal, I guess, where you can leave questions and we could do a Q&A next week. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.